when nothing and no one is outside the circle, that's God consciousness, for real. That's Homo Amor. That's the awakening of the new human and the new humanity. That's Metatron. That's a potential utopia. That's what Avatar's playing towards. And so we are here in the 4th week of Avatar. And we said, value moves me, value allures me, value generates political will, value generates moral will. And that's the core. And reality in the new story of value that we're telling here at the Center for Integral Wisdom, that we've just renamed the Center for World Philosophy and Religion. The new story of value, which integrates the validated insights of the leading edges of all the wisdom streams in the traditional period, the great religions, the great traditions, in the modern period, psychologies and sciences across multiple vectors, molecular biology, etc. And in the postmodern period, the understandings of history and how history works and how social constructions work, the validated insights of all three are woven together in a new emergent, a new intimacy. Right? A new intimacy is a new story of value. A new intimacy means a new configuration between the parts that creates something new. That's what a new story is. It's a new story of value. And so we've been doing, this is our last week doing this, and like complete mad welcome, everyone. It's so insanely great to be here. This is our 4th week of reading the texts of culture. And particularly, we're reading now the text of Avatar. And we've done 3 deep dive readings. So today's our last week, and you don't have to have come to all the other weeks, but I'm going to recapitulate a little bit along the way, and we're going to step in. And I want to start, and I'd like to go today if we can. Is everyone ready? I'd like to go, if we can, through 4 steps, and we're going to use the same code. David's going to resonate the code in 1 second, right? It's going to be the same code we did the last 3 weeks, but we keep applying it ever more deeply. It's a critical code, and David's a critical man. Right. And so I'm going to turn to Dave. He's going to resonate our code, and then we're going to step in, and we want to love this open. We want to blow this open, but not for entertainment. Although, I mean, being in the depth of study together of goodness, truth, and beauty is wildly beautiful entertainment. But we're not here to do wisdotainment. We're not here to accumulate likes. We're not here to be in a win-lose metrics on social media. We are here to be at the very heart of the revolution. We are in Florence. One mountain, many passes, the Florence of our day. We are today again at a time between worlds, at a time between stories. And it's only the articulation of a new story of value. And I've spent the last 20 years of my life talking about this day and night and studying this day and night. And then 20 years before, studying in a particular lineage. My beloved evolutionary partner, Barbara Marx Hubbard, right, who co-founded with me the Evolutionary Church, which we now call One Mountain, Many Paths, spent her decades trying to articulate this new story of value. We came together, and my brother, Zach Stein, has studied with me for the last 12, 13 years, and then stepped in as co-president of the center, right, is adding, right, his particular piece to the story. And then in the Unique Self Symphony, there's actually, right, an entire circle of people who are acting as fellows and scholars and artists and creators and sculptors and editors and all of the above in one person to actually together articulate the story of value. My dear friend, Ken Wilber, who is the co-founder of the center, is deeply involved. And we've spent, hundreds of hours, talking, as much as we can for many, many years, right? We talk every week. In the last year, Ken, Zach, and I have done, 12 or 13 several hour blow away deep dives in this conversation. Our friend Howard Bloom, and our friend Daniel Schmachtenberger, and our friend Sally Kempton and Lori Galperin, right? There's so many people, Dr. Christina Kincaid on the phenomenology of Eros side. Right, there's so many things. The Unique Self Institute is emergent now with Claire Molinaire, right? Shahati, right? Together with Claire, kind of evoked the festivals, right? Kirsten Zohar, right? I can go through so many names, right, of so many people, and I'm not going to now mention everyone. This is not about mentioning all the projects. So anyone I didn't mention, I apologize. This is just to get a sense that there's this deep and wide field. So we're ready to jump in. David's going to read the code, and then we're going on a wild ride, but a wild revolutionary ride, right? Our intention is to actually evolve the source code itself. And so to actually move something in the very axis of reality to begin to shift our self-understanding. And so we do these conversations here, and then this incredible team led by Krista and Christina, and with this incredible guidance and wisdom and holding space by Elena, right? Dive in and transform these into transcripts. And then we put them up on Medium, and we'll publish them. And this is just one vector of the center of trying to download these notions into culture, to articulate them, to feel them. And then what we do here then informs the entire great library. Okay, so we are ready to go. We are ready to go. And we have, by the way, parentheses, we have this incredible summer coming up. Incredible summer coming up. We're going to be doing a mystery school in Belgium. Right, the last weekend in August, we're going to be 5 days, 20 hours a day together. Like this wild, like beyond imagination, dance, song, celebration, dharma, to try and take the next step. And then Krista's holding that space with the whole Belgian field, and Shahati and Claire are holding that space. And we're going to be announcing our Unique Self Institute. It's all happening. Just this morning, I had a 2-hour conversation with Dr. Kincaid about, some of the key new notions in the Dharma that emerged directly from conversations we had here in One Mountain. So we're all fructifying each other. By the way, if you haven't used that word fructifying in a while, it's a good word. Meaning we're all enriching each other. We're a unique self-symphony. Zohar, are we a unique self-symphony? We are. Okay. Oh my God. Are we ready to go? We're ready to go. David, take us inside.
Ready to go.
Let's ready to go.
So here's this week's Evolutionary Love code. Evolutionary love is not merely an emotion. It is a perception. The evolutionary lover sees with God's eyes. Because love is a perception at its core, a perception that generates emotion, there's great hope in love. The universe sees, and the universe sees love. The universe feels, and the universe feels love. Seeing generates feeling, and feeling generates seeing. But we must start with perception, because perception can be trained through practice. Personal human love is a unique self-perception. Personal self-love is a perception of one's own unique self. However, one cannot be an evolutionary lover with these forms of perception alone. Evolutionary love requires a perception of the entire evolutionary process and our place within it. And with that, it's my pleasure to turn my word back to you, Dr. Marc.
David, thank you. Oh my God. So love is a perception. We spent last week on the theme of I love you, I see you. Right? That's what this code is about. Avatar talks about I see you, but I see you means not I have merely an emotion, energy in motion because I got hit by Cupid's arrow. Oops, it hit the secretary. Sorry. No, it's not just an emotion. It's not just the social construct of an emotion. Love is the feeling tone of cosmos itself. As cosmos sees, cosmos perceives. It perceives new possibility. It perceives new potentiality and births new potentiality. That's what Eros is. Love is Eros, and Eros is the movement of cosmos that sees the possibility of what can be born. Right? So when I love you, I see you both as you are, but I also see who you're yearning to be. When I love you not just for the person you are, but for the person that's longing to be born in you. Wow. To love is to see. Love is a perception. Now, the perception of love, and we're going to try and go here 5 steps. Okay, we're going to try and go here 5 steps. And we've got a big week, okay? And this is our last Avatar week. And I'm going to try and do this, right, with your permission, everybody, a little bit, with some sort of order. So this shouldn't be chaos. And yet it's a little bit chaos theory in the sense that there's order beneath the chaos. So I'm going to unfold in 5 steps. But just if you're new here, right? This is not a prepared kind of lecture. This is a talk. We're chatting, and I'm going to try and unfold, right, this vision for you, okay? And so Jacqueline always monitors many things on the inside and the outside, but can you hear me okay? We're okay, everything's good? Okay, so here we go. So we're going to look at a clip for a second. And this is a clip of Jake. And Jake is the hero of both Avatar 1 and Avatar 2. Jake is, and I'm going to do a couple of little recapitulations to welcome people that are new. So I'll just do little snippets. So if you haven't been here for the last 3 weeks and you haven't even seen the movie, you can still follow. So Jake is an injured Marine whose legs have been blown out. His legs could be fixed, his spinal cord could be fixed, but he doesn't have enough money to do it. So that's an image of a broken system in which only those with sufficient funds can actually get healed, which is much of where the world might be going to. It's actually where the United States already is with its broken system, which you have 50 million people who are uninsured. And what does that even mean? So let's bracket. That's one of the places where the United States is far behind, right? The social democracies of Europe. The social democracies of Europe have much to be critiqued for, but in that particular domain, they're doing beautifully. Part of the reason they're doing beautifully is because the United States has handled the defense budget. It's a complex issue. But wow, this is a story in which Jake is an injured Marine. He was a Marine because he wanted to test himself and to transform himself. And he wanted to stand for the good. He doesn't know how to fix his legs. And there's a particular scene in which we see Jake, and it's a key scene. This is one of the scenes that was cut out from the Avatar movie. Now, Jake is the person who's, in the end, his brother is killed. His brother was in the Avatar program. The Avatar program is a program run by Dr. Augustine Grace, Sigourney, however you pronounce her name, Weaver, in the movie, you know, which aligns human DNA to the Na'vi people on the Pandora planet and allows human being to enter into the body, a Na'vi body, and to function in that body. That's, of course, the Avatar story. And Jake, in the end, becomes a Na'vi person. Let's see Jake at the very beginning in one of the scenes that was cut from Avatar. So let's take a look at that scene right now. It's an amazing scene. Here we go.
Strong prey on the weak. It's just the way things are. Nobody does a damn thing. All I ever wanted in my sorry-ass life was a single thing worth fighting for.
And everyone catch that clip? Wow, that's one of the cut scenes from Avatar. So let me just say a side point. So side point is, how does the hero, Jake Scully, handle the impossibility of life? He laughs. You caught it at the end? You just lost a customer. Joke one. Joke two, these two guys come and they say, you're ruining my good mood. So he's being ironic and funny because laughter allows me to hold the impossibility and the paradox of reality. Reality is about live, love, and laugh. And laughter is one of the highest faculties of human perception. We've talked about that before, and we'll have to do an entire one mountain on laughter and what laughter tells me, why laughter is a faculty of perception. But you just notice it even in that scene. His ability to hold an impossible reality and find this moment of liberation in that impossibility comes from laughter. Side point. Everyone got that? Now, two, it gets even more beautiful. It gets kind of crazy beautiful now. Now, what does Jake say? What does Jake want? You see him on planet Earth. You see the injustice, right? He can't get medical care. His spine can actually be rebuilt, but it's only available to the wealthy, right? Which is exactly a kind of caste system on planet Earth, which is one of the great dangers of where we're going today on multiple levels. That's one of the potential catastrophic risks that could lead to the death of our humanity, in which augmentation, certain kinds of surgery, genetic modification are only available to a very elite upper class. So you actually have a 1% which for the first time in history is actually smarter, more beautiful, more aesthetically developed, more cognitively developed than the other 99%, because they're the only people who can afford those levels of augmentation. So this Jake moment is just pointing, hinting at that possibility. Seth, that's our second sidebar. But our primary bar is, what is Jake looking for here? Friends, does anyone, let's go to the chat box. Does anyone remember what's his key line here? What does Jake say? Anybody? What does Jake say? He's got one line. One line. What does he say? What does he say? He's got a line. Yes, Raquel. He says, all I've ever wanted in life is something worth fighting for. And what he means is, I want to take a stand for value. And right, and what he does is he finds in this bar this battle for justice, and in that battle for justice, he's enlivened. It's beautiful. The need to stand for value is an essential human need. Now, when there's an obvious enemy, when someone's obviously in violation of value, then in some senses it's easier. There's a famous movie with Robert Redford many, many years back called 3 Days of a Condor, in which the CIA is shown to be corrupt, and the head of Redford's division in the CIA turns out to be the person responsible for massacring the whole division. So at the very end of the movie, Redford figures out what's going on, has a gun, right, trained on his former hero, who is the chief of the CIA, and he says, he says sarcastically, furiously, you probably long for the war, don't you? And he says, yeah, I do. And then he says, but not for the reason you think. He says to Redford, he says, well, why? Why do you long for the war, says Redford, just completely disgusted with him. And he says, for the clarity. For the clarity, because in the war, right back in the war, it's talking about World War II in that context, we kind of knew who the enemy was. Hitler was the enemy. Mussolini, right, was the enemy. When we don't know who the enemy is, and we don't have a sense of our own identity, then what we do is we create an enemy. We manufacture the face of the enemy. We place someone else on the outside. You with us? We place someone else on the outside to give ourselves the illusion of being on the inside. The evolution of value is when we get to a place when no one's on the outside. Does everyone get that? The evolution of value is we get to a place when no one's on the outside. Actually, everyone's in the circle. That doesn't mean that there aren't people who need to be challenged. It doesn't mean that individual people can't fall out of the circle. They can, right? And Hitler fell out of the circle, and Mussolini fell out of the circle, and Pol Pot fell out of the circle, and Mao fell out of the circle, right? And the list goes on. However, it's not a class of people who fall out of the circle. We don't designate a class of people as the enemy and say, okay, that whole group of people is out of the circle in order to give ourselves the illusion that we're in the circle. We don't create an out group in order to give ourselves the illusion that we're in the in group. So the evolution of value is the evolution of love. Does everyone get that? It's very beautiful. The evolution of value is the evolution of love itself, in which actually everyone has a seat at the table. Every group has its own unique intimacy, and every group both participates in a shared field of value and yet has a unique expression of that value. Okay, that's part two. So we got that so far? Now let's go to the next step. Now step two. Step two. Now we're going to go back to Avatar. So, and let's get ready, Krista, David, Christina, let's get those clips from that book, right, ready. There's a book on skin that we're going to look at right in a couple of seconds. So let's get those clips ready from that book. Okay? Awesome. Okay. So one of the ways that Avatar has been analyzed that's in part true and in part not true, and this is not in the public analysis of Avatar, is actually abysmal and, just actually kind of pathetic, the reviews. And we've done this very deep and beautiful and gorgeous dive together and unpacked Avatar in so many levels in the last 3 weeks. In this last week, I want to look at a couple of other ways to talk about this story. I want to particularly look at one way that some theorists have approached this, right? Not the public theorists in the kind of public space, but, more sophisticated theorists, which is in part right. And I share with these theorists. We've approached this in the same way. I want to share this partial truth, but then I want to go back to what we've said the last 3 weeks and show a much deeper field at play here. Okay, so I know those two sentences didn't make much sense, so let me now explain. So part 2. The second way to actually understand Avatar is particularly Avatar 1, not Avatar 2, but particularly Avatar 1, is in the following way. And I'm going to give you an example, okay? All right, I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to do like a meta theory for a second, like a big sweep. Then I'm going to give you an example, which is not Avatar. Then I'm going to go back to Avatar 1. Those are our steps. So here's the meta theory. There are 3 kind of huge developmental stages. There are 3 stages of unfolding. And this exists across probably 60 or 70 different theorists writing, in the last 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. So the split between these 3 levels, which might be called traditional, modern, and postmodern. And that's a famous split that exists in, again, as I said, 30 or 40 major theorists in the last, 20, 30 years. So pre-modern traditional, and now I want to add something to this, that actually those 3 levels are actually levels. These are 3 levels that exist both within a human being and they exist in history. So let's say in the last 1,000 years, I'm just going to take one clip of the one swath of the last 1,000 years. Let's say till the Renaissance is pre-modern traditional. It actually starts earlier. It starts about 500, 600, 700 years earlier with the birth of the axial religions, somewhere around the time of Jeremiah and Confucius, a couple hundred years before Buddha. But let's just start the last 1,000 years. Until the Renaissance is pre-modern traditional, when basically the great religions rule in the world, and the great religions are aligned with the different kingdoms all over the world, whether that's China or Europe. Now, this pre-modern world is a world of value. The assumption, stay close, the assumption of all of the, stay close, the assumption of all of the pre-modern traditions is that value is real. Everyone got that? Value is real. Who's with us? Give me a yes if you're with us. Who's with us? Who's with us? Give me a yes in the chat box if you're with us. With us? We ready to go? Okay. So the assumption of all the pre-modern traditions, value is real. What they argue about is whose value is real. And actually the pre-modern traditional period, the traditional period is actually driven by a rivalrous conflict, rivalrous conflict between different value systems. And everyone says, my value is real and yours isn't. And therefore, in order to bring you to heaven, not only can I massacre you, says the Christian church, I'm obligated to massacre you. Wow, that's intense. So it's rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics, not between individuals, but between value systems. So the good news is everyone agrees value is real. The good news is that there are some shared deep values that people share, like love. However, everyone limits their value to their in-group. So we love our in-group, we don't love the out-group. As a matter of fact, the way we love the out-group is by killing them because they're rejecting the values of our in-group, and we only agree not to kill them if they surrender or they convert to our in-group. You get that? That's pre-modern value, but value is real, and that's important. That's beautiful and limited, because this realization that love is real is mediated through a prism, right? And that prism is pre-modern traditional. And great cruelties are inflicted. And even within a particular system, let's say within a particular religion or kingdom, there's also the in-group and the out-group, right? The wealthy, the aristocrats, everyone else is in the out-group. So there's a series of nested in-groups and out-groups. That makes sense to everyone? That's why when Voltaire begins modernity, Voltaire's clarion call is, remember the cruelties. Okay. Modernity comes along, and modernity says, whoa, 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 all the stuff that values real that you guys were saying, that was dependent on you guys saying that God spoke to you, or that reason led to your particular set of conclusions. That's not true. So modernity says, okay, let's forget about all these sources of value in God or in some objective field of value. And modernity actually says human beings are kind of making up value, but let's assume that some values we have to all kind of agree on them, and we'll call them real, even though they're no longer rooted in an objective source. And it's really not anymore about being part of a big system, a big religion, or a big kingdom. It begins to be more about being an individual. And the word self comes into the dictionary for the first time in the Renaissance. So it's the birth of individuality. Now, it has older antecedents, actually, in the biblical texts. But as a center of gravity, the value is the individual. And although there's a group of shared values that people share in different parts of the world, but the source of value is no longer clear. So what modernity does is modernity borrows its social capital from pre-modernity, assumes value is real. Everyone get that? But doesn't really prove it. Okay. But acts it, right? Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and also evolves value, right? Even though it doesn't really know what the source is, nonetheless, value evolves nonetheless, right? Because modernity realizes the pre-modern religions got it wrong. What unites us is far greater than that which divides us. And in comes modernity, and all of a sudden slavery is abolished, right? And in comes modernity, and all of a sudden there's universal human rights. And in comes modernity, and all of a sudden there's the emergence of the feminine. So it's a very big deal. And then along comes postmodernity, and postmodernity says, oh, wow, right? Modernity, right? Modernity doesn't have any real source for value. They made it up. All value is deconstructed. All value is subjective. On the one hand, that's what postmodernity does. On the other hand, postmodernity itself, just like modernity did, evolves value and says, wow, when you said everyone was equal in modernity, you meant men who owned land in England. But gay people, LGBT, right? Women didn't really have the right to vote, right? Blacks, right? In America, racism, right? In other words, there were all sorts of excluded fringe populations, people with sexuality that was alternative to yours, right? There were all sorts of hidden covert racisms, sexisms, homophobisms. So all of the excluded people need to be included, need to be given full rights. So that's the evolution of value in postmodernity, even though postmodernity itself, like modernity, doesn't actually believe that value has an objective source. And that's the contradiction in both modernity and postmodernity. Okay, was that too complex to follow, everyone? How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? Just give me a yes. Just give me a yes. How many people follow that? How many people tracking that? Okay. And I know it's subtle. Okay, I'm doing a lot in a short amount of time. We tracking? Okay, Ujis, we okay? Okay, awesome. All right. Now let's take a look at something. So what happens is whenever a new structure of consciousness comes on board, it attacks the previous structure of consciousness. So postmodernity attacks modernity just like modernity attacks pre-modernity. Right? So modernity says religions, get rid of them. It doesn't realize I need to include and transcend that was good in the religions. So it's just get rid of the religions. So modernity becomes very anti-religious, anti-pre-modernity, anti-traditional. Does that make sense? And then post-modernity becomes anti-modern. It doesn't see, just like modernity didn't see any good in the religions, it threw out the baby with the bathwater. So post-modernity becomes anti-modernity and doesn't see any good in modernity. Does that make sense, everybody? And then what postmodernity does is, let me just try and say this in a different way. You might say that pre-modernity is ethnocentric. Does that make sense? And then modernity and postmodernity are world-centric, meaning every human being is included. Does everyone get that? Every human being is included. But when it says every human being is included, it does it, now stay really close, I'm going to explain what this means. It does it in an ethnocentric way. That's the world-centric move of postmodernity. Everyone's included, all human beings. actually, when postmodernity does that, it does it by actually attacking modernity in a way that doesn't see the enormous goods of modernity. And that's, as we're going to see in a second, it's something that Avatar actually does. But I want to give you just a previous example that a colleague of mine, pointed towards, right, in one of his programs. And it's a great example. So we're going to take a look, and I'm going to show you, this is a book, right, on skin. This is a classical postmodern book. And I'm just going to read you 5 clips from this book. You're going to see them on the screen. This is a postmodern book that's around today, and it's about skin, right? And it says, just by looking at someone, we can't tell who they are on the inside. Just by looking at someone, we can't tell who they are on the inside, but sometimes people try to anyways. Next. Skin color can't tell you much about what people are like, what they know, what foods they think are yummy, what their favorite books are, or even where they were born. So far, that's pretty good, right, everybody? That's pretty good. Like, wow, this is a world-centric truth. This is a postmodern. It begins to be there in modernity, but it's not fully there yet, because modernity still has lots of racism. There's still slavery, right, in some parts of the world. There certainly aren't any civil rights acts in the world, all over the world, until very close to postmodernity. So this is really a postmodern text here, right? And it's beautiful. It's telling us a great, beautiful world-centric truth. But now go to the next one. Go to the next clip. A long time ago, way before you were born, a group of white people made up an idea called race. They sorted people by skin color and said that white people were better, smarter, prettier, and that they deserve more than anybody else. Keep going. When people believe this untrue story about race, that's called racism. Keep going. And last one, racism is also things people do and the unfair rules they make about race so that white people get more power and are treated better than everybody else. Racism happens in lots of big and small ways. It's all around us, even if we don't always notice it. Done. Okay. So this text, which was sent to a colleague of mine that I haven't talked to in about a decade, and he shared it, and it's a good sharing, points to this great weakness. So what happens? This is a world-centered truth. The first 2 clips we saw, the first 2 slides we saw were absolutely true. We're judge people, said Martin Luther King, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That's beautiful. That's gorgeous. But then what does it do? It then cloaks its world-centric truth and turns it into an ethnocentric attack. And what does it say? Actually, the bad white people created race. Of course, that's utterly and completely not true historically. There's not even a word of truth in that, right? Racism or various forms of caste systems existed all over Africa, right? All over Asia, right? Racism and domination by race and other forms existed way before white people. It had nothing to do with white people, wasn't formed by white people in any sense, shape, or form. That's actually a blatant lie, right? That's tragic, right? And we got to really understand this. And then it says, right? And then it goes on to kind of talk about, how this is this white creation. So what are we doing now? We're now being racist against white people. You get what just happened? So we just expressed a world-centric truth, and that world-centric truth just went ethnocentric and just turned white people into bad and said that white people created racism, which is, of course, doesn't even have a drop of truth. Not only doesn't have a drop of truth, let's just stay with me, but if you actually get the move of history, actually, where did modernity take hold in the world? Modernity took hold in the world in its center of gravity. Stay close, friends, stay close. Modernity took hold in the world in its center of gravity in Western Europe, right? And in Western Europe, groups of white people began to express modern ideas. So modernity was an interior transformation in the world of ideas, which for the first time in human history ended slavery. Within 100 years, 150 years after modernity expressing its new groups of ideas, meaning groups of white people expressing these ideas, what actually happened is slavery was outlawed for the first time all over the world, and the feminine emerged all over the world, and new scientific forms emerged all over the world. That's critically important. So on the one hand, postmodernity is pointing importantly to latent forms of blatant, horrific, terrible right? Unconscionable racism that still exists. That's postmodernity's great gift. And yet it turns and blames, right, the white people for them, when in fact, that's not true. Now, did white people participate in the racism that existed all through history? Of course they did, right? And was there colonialism that was horrific? Of course it was. But that wasn't an expression of white people. That was an expression of pre-modern traditional consciousness that exists in black worlds and yellow worlds and in white worlds, right? And in purple worlds all over the world. But it wasn't a white issue. Does everyone get that? It's very deep. It's very deep, and it's really important to understand. Now, Avatar 1 makes the same mistake. And it's not Avatar 2. This is where my friend who cited these texts got it wrong. But in other words, he talked about Avatar 1 and Avatar 2. No, Avatar 1 makes this mistake. And it's Avatar 1, and I pointed out this 2 weeks ago, right? Where I said a couple of weeks ago, I said, if you notice, Avatar doesn't bring together the vision of the Na'vi people. And the Na'vi people are clearly the colored people. They're blue, right? But they're the colored people. They represent indigenous tribes. They represent other races who are not white. So they're the heroes. And in Avatar 1, the white people, bar a couple of notable exceptions, but the white people as a civilization are the bad people. That's the setup of Avatar 1. And so, my colleague basically viewed Avatar, right, both avatars, as being an expression in part of this phenomena. That was the weakness, his critique of Avatar, but an expression in part of this same skin book in which all of pre-modernity, the blue people, the indigenous, is praised, and modernity, right, is not integrated. Now that's true. When we said that 2 weeks ago, that's true, but it's limited. But it's an important point to make, and I want to honor that point. That's an important point to make. Avatar 1 does suffer, not Avatar 2, but Avatar 1 does suffer from this, at least a fragrance of this postmodern critique of modernity, which fails to integrate the values of modernity. That's a critically important point. Everyone got that? Okay. Now, let's go to the next step. Let's go even deeper, though. Ready to go deeper? Who's ready to go deeper? And we're going to go like another 20, 25 minutes here, okay? So we're going to go like crazy deep now, okay? It's crazy exciting. We're ready to go. Let's go like a next step, okay? Really, at the core, that's not actually what Avatar 1 and Avatar 2 are about. It has that moment. We should point that moment out. But actually, Avatar 1 and Avatar 2 are about something in their core. And Avatar 2 is actually in many ways a better movie than Avatar 1. And by the way, these movies are important. Avatar 1 was the all-time box office highest economic performer in world history. So these are not side texts of culture. And Avatar 2 is right now ranking, I think, number 6 or 7, right? Something like that in terms of all films in history. That's a big deal. These are not side issues. These are at the very core of culture. So when we point out that Avatar 1 suffers from the same issue as this skin book, in that it dismisses modernity and doesn't integrate the technologies of modernity and the goods of modernity with the insights of a kind of multicultural post-modernity, the failure to do that integration is at the heart of the culture wars. Does everyone get that? That's at the heart of the culture wars, and we need to get over that. We need to actually realize everyone's got a seat at the table, and we need modernity. And modernity has enormous goods and enormous dignities, and we need post-modernity, and we need to integrate the best of both and not the weaknesses of both, right? Okay, so let's take this deeper look at Avatar. That's actually, really what's going on in Avatar, and this is what we pointed to last week and the week before. Avatar's not really about a world-centric versus ethnocentric clash. It's about something else. It's about the emergence of a new structure of consciousness. Now let's dive in, everybody, okay? Let's dive in. And what's this new structure of consciousness? It's what we call Homo Amor. And Homo Amor is a cosmic love story. It's not about world-centric. It's actually about this notion of cosmocentric. And cosmocentric, or what we call Homo Amor, is about an intergalactic love story. That love exists not only, right? Every race said you can only love people in your own race. And if you marry out of your own race, right, there's something fundamentally in violation. That's ethnocentric traditional. Modernity says, in the Avatar version of it, as expressed by Miles Quatrich, the Colonel, you can only marry, you can only love, particularly you can only love within your people. And if you love outside of your people, says Miles Quatrich, you're getting some tail, right? It's like you're doing a physical pornographic act, but it can't be any love there, right? Miles Quatrich says to Jake, you got some local tail and you started playing for the wrong side in Avatar 1. Or he says to him in Avatar 1, how does it feel like to betray your own kind? So what we talked about last week is that actually in Avatar 1 and Avatar 2, but especially Avatar 1, there's an ethno-humanism. There's an ethno-world-centric position, which I'm ethno-human, I'm a racist, but I'm a racist in the sense that I'm for the human race, and all other races don't actually play a role. All other races are in some sense subhuman. They're, as Miles Quatrich called them, aboriginal hordes. They're hostiles, they're primitives, and we're gonna blow a crater in their racial memory, a hole in their racial memory, says Miles Quatrich, that will force them off their planet so we can take Pandora and use Pandora for the sake of humans. Or we're gonna hunt the Tulkun in Avatar 2, the whale-like species, who are far more advanced than humans, but since the Tulka have this Amrita in a particular organ of the brain, we're going to kill them because they can stop human aging, and we are ethno-human. So actually, what Avatar is about actually an ethno-humanism. And what's standing against that ethno-humanism is the possibility of a genuine intergalactic Homo Amor. That is to say, it's the realization that not the universe, a love story, but what we call cosmo-erotic humanism. It's a cosmo-erotic universe. It's an erotic cosmos. It's what we call, here's a word, the amorous cosmos. We live in an amorous cosmos. And in the amorous cosmos, the actual structure of reality is eros. The cosmos is eros all the way up and all the way down. And the quality of infinity, and by infinity, I don't mean lots of numbers. I'm not using infinity in the sense that Gödel, G-O-D-E-L, right, was talking about it in Tarski, right, in mathematics. We're talking about infinite numbers. I'm talking about infinity in the sense of that which is beyond space-time, right, that which is, right, infinity and eternity, using them as synonymous words, but not eternity is not lots of time, and infinity is not infinite numbers. It's that which is beneath time, it's beneath space, right? And that deep realization that reality is the infinity of divinity. It's the infinity of consciousness. As Max Planck, the quantum physicist, said, consciousness is fundamental, and the entire cosmos is an expression of consciousness, and the face of consciousness is intimacy. So consciousness is not just infinity of consciousness, there's an infinity of intimacy. And an infinity of intimacy means that separate parts come together to create new wholes, and eventually life is created. And that the cosmos itself is not empty. That would be an awful waste of space, right? As Jodie Foster's father said to her, right, in the movie Contact, right? Is the cosmos empty? That'd be an awful waste of space, right? Says her father, and then says Matthew McConaughey playing her boyfriend, and then she says to the children, it's 3 times in the movie, what's the name of the movie? Contact. 3 times. It'd be an awful waste of space. We actually realize, as all the great traditions did, all the great traditions had a notion of extra dimensionals and extraterrestrials. We actually realize that it's a cosmic reality, that reality is a love story, and that therefore Jake can go from a human body to an avatar body, number 1. Number 2, Jake can actually fall in love with Neytiri. Right? Number 3, they can create children together. And as there's eros that moves between species, it's cosmocentric, right? Who we are unique configurations of love and eros, but what binds us is that we're all expressions, we're all part of the fabric of love and eros. And so instead of generating a kind of Star Wars intergalactic war, We need to generate at this moment in history this vision of Homo Amor, because Homo Amor becomes a strange attractor for an intergalactic love story. And we are unquestionably at a moment in history where we are seconds before, whether it's seconds or minutes or decades or a century, that's a detail on the timeline, but we're right before an intergalactic world. And so we need to articulate an intergalactic consciousness of Homo Amor. Homo Amor is an intergalactic love story. So what I want to do, with your permission, is I want to do something we haven't done in years, something like enormously special, is we need to create, and I'm wildly excited. If you're up for being excited with me, let's be excited together. We need to create new sacred texts that tell the story of this intergalactic love story, okay? So we're going to look at a new sacred text, which we just wrote in the last weeks. And in this sacred text, I'm merging cosmoerotic humanism with a text by one of the great interior scientists of the last century. And I'm bringing the words together to actually write a new sacred text. And we need to write new sacred text as part of our emergent world religion, world spirituality. Again, a world religion, which is a context for our diversity. It's not a homogenizing world religion. It's a world religion, which is a unique self-symphony. And then every particular religion is a unique instrument in that symphony. And it's got to be a unique self-symphony, which is intergalactic, in which every civilization and in every galaxy and all of its civilizations actually is playing a unique instrument in this unique self-symphony. But the musical score of the unique self-symphony is eros, is love, is the value of love. Because, and here's the thing, love is a value. That's what Jake wants to stand for something. So he sees love being violated in the bar in the first clip that we saw. What does he see in that bar? That little scene, that cut scene from Avatar that we saw in the beginning. He sees a man violating a woman, right? First he slapped her, he treats her horrifically, and he's in his wheelchair, and he goes and stands for the goddess, for she. And even though he's crippled, he wants to be in that fight for value. But the value is love, is eros. That's the penultimate value. The penultimate value of cosmos is eros and intimacy. Eros and intimacy are the structure of cosmos. That's the core of cosmoerotic humanism. All the way up and all the way down, the structure of cosmos is eros and intimacy. Eros, what's eros mean? So we have an eros equation in cosmoerotic humanism. Eros equals the experience of radical aliveness, moving towards seeking, desiring ever deeper contact. And that's the movie with Jodie Foster, Contact. It's the desire for contact. What drives Jodie Foster in that old movie is contact, ever deeper contact and ever greater wholeness. That's eros. And eros, right? The desire for ever greater contact, ever deeper wholeness is a desire for even more than that. It's for greater intimacy. What's intimacy? We have an intimacy equation in cosmoerotic humanism, right? That intimacy equals shared identity. That's a greater whole. Shared identity in the context of otherness. We're distinct, we're unique. Times mutuality of recognition, we recognize each other. That's I see you in Avatar. I see you, I recognize you. Times mutuality of pathos, I feel you. Times mutuality of value. What's our mutual value? There's a mutuality of value in intimacy. And what's our shared value? Love, eros. The value of eros, the value of caring, of loving, of pouring into each other, of sacrificing for each other, of being committed to each other, of being in service to each other, of being in devotion to each other, of being in devotion to each other's unique self-gorgeousness, of seeing each other's beauty. That's a shared field of value, and that allows us to create intergalactically shared purpose, right? Mutuality of purpose. That's intimacy. So the values of cosmos are eros and intimacy. Those are the core values of cosmos. And in the first cut clip from Avatar, we see Jake wanting to stand for the violation of eros, the violation of love. But he's got a small view of it. His view is, oh, this guy in the bars, right, violating this woman, I'm going to go attack him and stand for love. And that's beautiful. That's who Jake is. But then in Avatar 1, when he gets to Pandora, he becomes ethno-human. In the beginning, he starts working for Quattrich, because his sense of the love and eros that needs to be protected is, I got to protect human beings. And because he doesn't yet have a sense of the full value of eros as a cosmic value, he says that value of eros lives in that bar standing for that woman. But the Na'vi, we're gonna blow them out. And in order to get unobtainium, the mineral that we need for us to survive, that's how Jake starts until Jake transforms and he moves from being ethno-human to being an intergalactic lover. And he actually falls in love with Neytiri. That's what the story's about. Now, in Avatar 2, as we saw last week, Neytiri actually regresses. She regresses to being ethno-Na'vi. And this is where Avatar actually transcends the postmodern understanding that my friend who compared Avatar to Skin didn't quite understand. In other words, in Avatar 2, and I'm not talking about the filmmakers of Avatar, that's not the issue, but Avatar culture speaking through Avatar, whatever the intention of the filmmakers are, is irrelevant to us. The artifact, the text of the movie stands by itself. In Avatar 2, there's actually a realization that it's not humans are bad, white humans are bad, and the Na'vi are good. It's a much more sophisticated realization in which actually Neytiri herself regresses and she becomes an ethno-Na'vi. And she says at the beginning of the movie, one, I don't like Spider, Miles Quatrich's kid, who got left behind on Pandora, who's then raised by Neytiri and Jake. I don't like him playing with my kids. So she's ethno-Na'vi. Right? And then she grabs Spider, who she's raised later in the movie. When Miles Quatrich is holding her daughter with a knife to her daughter's throat, she grabs Spider, puts a knife to Spider's throat and says, a son for a son. But her point is, Spider, even though I raised him, is not my kid. I'll kill him if you kill my daughter because it's about blood. It's about ethno-Na'vi. That's the tragedy of Neytiri. And it's actually Spider who sees through it most clearly. And Spider is the heroic, emergent Homo Amor. Spider is the person in Avatar 2 who both loves Jake Sully, loves Jake Sully's kids, loves Neytiri, is willing to sacrifice his life and risk his life to save his not blood sister, but Neytiri and Jake's daughter, when he steps out and says to Miles Quatrich, who's holding, right, the daughter, which is his not blood sister, but his kind of stepsister, if you will, right, his emotional sister, and he says, don't hurt her. And at the same time, Spider recognizes Miles Quatrich, right? And Miles Quatrich, whose memories have been downloaded now into an Avatar body, who's a key figure in Avatar 2, he says to Miles Quatrich, Spider, when Miles Quatrich succeeds in riding the mountain banshee kind of horse, as it were, right, and taming it and creating this, and he's very heroic, right? He says to him, Spider, to Quatrich in his Avatar body, he says, I see you. And I see you as I love you. I see you. And he actually saves Miles Quatrich at the end of the movie. Doesn't stay with him, doesn't subscribe to his values, but Spider is the person who's holding this possibility of this intergalactic Homo Amor. And we actually see this possibility of actually perhaps Miles Quatrich in his new body, an Avatar body, can actually evolve beyond his ethno-humanism. And actually Jake and Neytiri might have to evolve themselves, right? And not regress to their own ethno-family, which they do in Avatar 2. They regress to their ethno-family moment and they actually endanger all of the water people. So it's a much more subtle and beautiful field. We begin to understand that what Avatar is pointing towards is not ethno-human or ethno-Na'vi. It's standing against ethno-human, against ethno-Na'vi, and it's standing for a cosmocentric vision of Homo Amor, a cosmocentric love story. Okay, we ready, everybody? Now we're going to read a text. We're going to finish with this text, but this text is, it's the first time that we're presenting a new form of sacred text. These are the sacred texts of Homo Amor. So you with us, everybody? Let's do this. Who's up for it? We're ready to go. So let's put the text, if we can, on the screen or in the chat box, whichever way we're doing it. We're going to read this text together. This is a fabulous text. And this is a new text. This is a new, we're creating together a new lineage. And this is a lineage which everyone has a place. This is the emergence of cosmoerotic humanism. It's the emergence of a new unique self-symphony in which every religion, every system has a place, a cosmocentric vision, and this is the emergence of a new sacred text. So this text was written originally by the great interior scientist Abraham Cook, and I rewrote the text and interpolated cosmoerotic humanism. So this is our text, and let's call the text a Homo Amor love song. This is a Homo Amor love song, and this is what Avatar 1 and Avatar 2 are about. It's not about pre-modern, modern, and postmodern, although there's a moment like that, which I pointed towards, and my colleague pointed towards. It's actually about this emergence of Homo Amor, of a cosmocentric intergalactic love story, but it's about the importance and reality of all the levels. Now, what do I mean by all the levels? Here we go. This is going to take us just 5 minutes, but it's crazy beautiful, maybe 7 minutes. There is a one who sings the song of his soul. And in her soul, she finds it all, full, complete spiritual satisfaction. Okay, and I move back and forth in this text between his and her, all through the text. So this is the first level. I'm going to call this egocentric. And egocentric means there is a one who sings the song of his soul or her soul, meaning it's about me and my transformation and my development, right? And my family. It's about, that's egocentric. It's not negative. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to sing the song of your soul. And in her soul, she finds it all. And it's everything's about, and I would say most human potential movement Americans are in this category. It's about their transformation. It's about their hero's journey, right? It's about their story. And that's beautiful. That's a beautiful level of consciousness. That's a great emergent. I'm not just living a rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics life. I'm going deep. I'm on the journey, but my journey is my journey. It's my personal transformation journey. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs is very much about my personal transformation journey. And Joseph Campbell's hero's journey is about my personal transformation journey. And it's beautiful and it's necessary and it's important. That's level one, that's egocentric. But then there's a second level. And there is a one who sings the song of the nation, right? She leaves the zone of her personal soul, which she doesn't find wide enough. Not enough just my story. I've got to be part of a larger story, my tribe, right? My nation, my religion, and this is beautiful, right? She leaves the zone of her personal soul and she doesn't find wide enough, but she doesn't find wide enough and not settled in ideal serenity, meaning I can't rest just in my personal transformation story. And she attaches herself with tender love to the totality of the congregation of her people. Italians and Germans and Israelis and right, Saudi Arabians and Americans and French, or Catholics and Jews and Sunnis and Shiites, right? That can be beautiful. That doesn't have to be. That's very beautiful. I'm connected to my people, and my people, whether it's my religion or my tribe or whatever whatever tribe I'm part of that tribe. I'm willing to live for that tribe and to sacrifice for that tribe. Now, I have to tell you gently, the New Age world doesn't know this well. The New Age world is very, very unwilling to sacrifice for anything other than their own personal transformation, right? That for a week, we can get together in Burning Man, but even Burning Man, right? We do it for a week, and then we go back to the win-lose metrics. To actually build a structure where I sacrifice all year to create a tribe, it's very rare that the New Age does that, right? The actual capacity to be ethnocentric is a very beautiful capacity, right? And let's read it again. There is a one who sings the song of the nation, which is my wider tribe, right? Maybe we should change that to nation. The song of the tribe is maybe a better way to say it. She leaves the zone of her personal soul, which she doesn't find wide enough and not settled in ideal serenity, and attaches herself with tender love to the totality of the congregation of her people, which might be an avatar, all of the Navi, which is Natiri, or all of the human beings, which is Miles Quatrich, right? And Natiri is very ethno-Navi. It's only her parents in Avatar 1 who kind of force her to engage Jake and says, teach Jake our ways. They see what she doesn't see. She falls in love with Jake, but it's a one-time falling in love, and then she reverts to ethno-Navi. But she loves her tribe. She feels her tribe, and she can hear the ancestors, the voice of the ancestors. It's very beautiful. Natiri is a very beautiful example. Natiri is a gorgeous example of actually ethno-Navi. And this is something that Avatar 1 doesn't get clearly, but Avatar 2 gets much more clearly. Avatar 1 is very, very much a kind of new age, the postmodern attacks the modern. The blue people are great. The white people are bad. Avatar 2 gets it much more clearly. Yes, Natiri is a beautiful example, right? But she's ethno-Navi. She's a beautiful example of tribal. She's a beautiful example of indigenous people, but indigenous people actually are ethnocentric. The shamans of one tribe work with their tribe, then they massacre the next tribe, right? So there's a moment in the history of people on Pandora where the tribes come together, but only within only within Pandora. So they're still ethno-Navi or ethno-Pandoran. But it's a beautiful level, right? There is a one who sings the song of the nation. She leaves the zone of her personal soul natiri, which she doesn't find wide enough, and she's part of the Navi. She attaches herself with tender love to the story of the Navi, to the totality of the congregation of her people, the Navi. And together with her, he sings her songs, he suffers her pains, he takes delight in her hopes. He ponders high and pure ideas about her past and future. She can hear the voice of the ancestors, and he investigates with love and the wisdom of the heart, the inner content of her soul. So I notice again, I switched between masculine and feminine. This is a view of the either ethno-Navi, or it can be, right, it can also be ethno-human. The human, right? Miles Quatrich views humanity as his tribe. Because once you get into an intergalactic world, your tribe is not your nation or kingdom on Earth, right? But actually the human beings themselves become your tribe. Does that make sense, everyone? But then there's a third level. And there is a one who widens his soul or her soul even further until it expands and spreads beyond the boundary of Israel. By the beyond the boundary of Israel, I mean, and I'm going to change that. Let me amend that. Beyond the boundary of the tribe, beyond the ethno boundary of the tribe, right? To sing the song of humanity. Okay, and this is again, this is written originally in like 1920, and I've adjusted it. I'm still in the middle of adjusting and editing it. Right, to sing the song of humanity, meaning I'm world-centric, right? So this is, I moved beyond the Navi, and I'm now world-centric. I've moved beyond Estonians or British or American or Catholic or Jewish, right? I'm world-centric kind of in the context of planet Earth. I'm world-centric. This is what world-centric consciousness is, every human being. So there is a one, this third song is there is a one who widens the soul even further until it expands and spreads beyond the boundary of, right, the one tribe Israel, or whoever the tribe happens to be, to sing the song of humanity. His soul is continuously enlarged by the genius of man and woman, by the glory of her divine image. He aspires towards man and woman's universal purpose and anticipates his higher holification, right? We all become whole together. And from this living source of world-centric consciousness, does she draw the entirety of his thoughts, her thoughts and explorations, her aspirations and her visions. That's world-centric. Classical world-centric, every human being. That's the third song. So the first one's egocentric intimacy, or egocentric consciousness. The second is ethnocentric consciousness, tribal-centric consciousness. The third one is world-centric consciousness. And does everyone get that what I was pointing out today is that when you're talking at an intergalactic level, right, then being just for humans becomes a form of ethnocentric consciousness. That makes sense, everyone? But when we're talking just about planet Earth, then humans are ever, right? Being just, being for humans is world-centric consciousness. But that's not enough. World-centric consciousness is not enough. I need to move beyond world-centric consciousness. In the context of human beings, I need to move beyond world-centric consciousness and actually feel beyond. I got to include animals. And even beyond including animals, I've got to include all of existence in its totality. I've got to go from world-centric to cosmocentric. There is one who rises even further than this in expansion until he joins herself in unity. And again, I'm moving between masculine and feminine. He joins herself in unity with all of existence in its totality, with all creatures, with all worlds, right? Navi, Contact, Jodie Foster, Star Wars, Star Trek, right? Starman, Jeff Bridges, 1984, right? Begin to see that vision. Michael, the beautiful movie Michael, right? With John Travolta, right? All, right? This anticipation in literature and science fiction and the great traditions of this much bigger world. And together with all of them, she gives forth its fourth song. And this is the one who engages in a chapter of song, who's promised that he lives in the emergent world. So that's the cosmocentric song. There's an egocentric song, egocentric consciousness, egocentric intimacy. Just me, my personal transformation. There's ethnocentric intimacy in the context of planet Earth, my tribe, my nation, my religion, right? There's world-centric intimacy, every human being, right? And then there's cosmocentric intimacy, intergalactic Homo Amor. And all four of those matter. But here's the key. At the highest level is when I value every level. Every song has a place in the unique self symphony. My story of personal transformation, that song is beautiful. And my ethnocentric, my tribe, that's beautiful. Whether my tribe is the Christians or the French or the humans, right, in a broader intergalactic world. And then my world-centric song, all of humanity, if I'm on planet Earth, is beautiful. And my cosmocentric song, intergalactic, is beautiful. All of those songs matter. I need to be both egocentric and ethnocentric and world-centric and cosmocentric. All those songs come together. That's the last piece. And there is a one who rises with all these songs together in one intimacy. And all of them send forth their voices. All together, they play their melodies, and each pours vigor and life into the other. The sound of jubilance and the sound of joy, the sound of celebration, and the sound of exultance, the sound of rejoicing, and the sound of the sacred. Let's change the holiness when we write this again to the sacred. And he writes, this is, and we write, and this, we did this text together, the song of the soul, the song of the nation, the song of humankind, the song of the cosmos, all flow together within her, within him, all the time at every moment. And this completedness, in its fullness, rises to become the song of the sacred, the song of God, the song of humankind, the cosmic song, the evolutionary song, the intimate song of all kinds. And her mighty glory and beauty, and her mighty truth and magnificence, Israel is Shir El. And here I'm using Israel as, in the old lineage sense, Israel is Shir El, which means the song of God. Israel is all nations and all galaxies. Dancing with she as she, a simple song, a double song, a threefold song, a fourfold song, a Homo Amor song. And this is now the last piece, Cook, the Song of Solomon. So the Song of Solomon, friends, to the king and queen to whom wholeness belongs, that phrase at the very end, right? A Homo Amor love song. I'm like, wow. So that very last phrase, the Song of Solomon's, that's from Cook's original text. And he's referring to the lineage text of the Song of Songs, which says, Tohu Ratsufa Hava. The inside of all reality is lined with love, is lined with Eros. Meaning all of reality is a love song, and that love song of all of reality is the story of the evolution of love. You get that? That love song of all of reality is the story of the evolution of love. Love evolves, it's not static. Love is the value. Let's put this together, everyone, right? And let's take the text off. Let's see each other for the last second, right? Love is the value. Can we come together? Is that okay? Can we take this off for a second? Here we go. There we go. Perfect. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Does everyone get that? Love is the value. Eros is the value of cosmos. So we start with Jake in a bar, and he wants to stand for love, but in a very narrow way, in a bar, in a beautiful way. He's willing to stand for love and to stand for the goddess who's been violated. But he needs to expand that story. And Jake needs to actually expand the boundary of where we place love. Love's not just the in-group, and I create an out-group to give myself an experience of being an in-group, right? So, right, the in-group is me and my people, everyone else is out. That's how most of the New Age world lives. It's how most of the human potential world lives, right? We don't sacrifice our money, our real resources. We spend only really like 98% on our family, and 2% we do a little philanthropy. Because what we really care about is we're egocentric. We pretend, we write a few checks to be a little bit, bigger, but basically it's about me, my family. That's where we spend our money. That's where we spend our time. That's what we think about. That's what we dream about. And we place everybody else on the outside, even though we don't say we are. That's a narrow egocentric intimacy. It's not healthy egocentric intimacy. We need egocentric intimacy. We need to prioritize our family in particular ways, but then we need to go deeper. Ethnocentric intimacy, the whole tribe. And then world-centric intimacy, world-centric consciousness, right? A world-centric song, all of humanity, and then an intergalactic song. And that's where we need to go. That's the possibility, and that's the evolution of love. That's why this text ends with Cook saying, this is the Song of Songs of Solomon, meaning that's the love song, which Cook is now saying is the love song of cosmos. Do you get what just happened? And I added there the king and queen. And then Cook wrote, to whom wholeness belongs. And Cook and I wrote this text together. Right? What a delight and honor. So the king to whom wholeness belongs is a phrase in the lineage, which means Metatron. Metatron is the name in the lineage for when actually the human being becomes divine. The human being becomes divine when no one is left out of my love story. That's called Metatron. Metatron, the human being becomes divine when no one's left out of my love story. There's no one on the outside. Just last minute, can you go deeper the last second, everyone? The human being becomes divine when no part of myself is left out of the love story. When all the split off parts of myself are integrated, when all my shadows are integrated, when all of me is in the love story. So when no person, no animal, no thing, no people, nothing's outside the love story. I realize all of cosmos lives in me and I affect all of cosmos. Wow. That's unimaginable. That's unimaginable. You know, I once had a conversation with my friend Terry Nelson. And, you know, Terry talked about this intuition that existed in a piece of work that he was doing where someone comes late to an event and you say to the person who's late, wow, why are you late? Take responsibility. But then you turn to the whole group and you say, well, we're all responsible for that person being late. Well, why? Because ultimately it's all lives in me. I affect the whole thing. I affect the whole system, right? I can actually change the direction of the system. I can impact the whole thing. Might not be immediately visible, but actually whatever I do ripples through the system and creates multitudinous effects, butterfly effects, using that new language of physics all over reality, ripples through eons of space and time. Because actually, I know that's true because I actually feel that it all lives in me. And actually, the definition of enlightenment is that I'm cosmo-erotic humanism in person. It throbs in me. It pulses in me. And that's the true enlightenment experience that very few people have. The enlightenment experience is where I actually experience, I am cosmo-erotic humanism in person. The whole thing moves in me. I impact the whole thing. I affect the whole thing. Right? I have unimaginable power. That's Metatron. That's when actually there's no longer a boundary. It's not, I'm powerful in my life. That's the kind of word, I'm empowered in my life. Yes, that's a good, that's egocentric transformational journey. That's beautiful. And then I'm empowered and I stand with my tribe. And that's beautiful. I affect the whole tribe affects me. And then I'm part of world centric, then I'm part of cosmocentric, and I realize it all lives in me. And there's no boundary. There's no one to be divine, right, to become Metatron, to be the baby-faced divine, to be the human being who becomes God. Right? And God becomes the human being. That's the Christ intuition. The human being becomes God and God becomes human being. There's a blurring. Human being and God inter-include with each other. That happens when I realize there's no one outside the circle. No one's a stranger. No one's a stranger to the divine. No one's a stranger to the divine. And so I can actually meet you and fall in love with you in one moment. Doesn't mean we move in together, but I can actually fall in love with you in one moment because I see you. That's what Avatar is about. I see you. Right? I see your beauty. And your beauty lives in me and my beauty lives in you. And I can be in devotion to your beauty. And your beauty is utterly unique, unlike any other at the same time. Right? But no one's outside the circle. No one's outside the circle. Every unique expression is part of the unique self symphony. No one's a stranger. No one's a stranger to the divine. So when you become that kind of human being, that's called the crossing. That's what it means to cross to the other side. Right? Abraham is the Hebrew, and the word Hebrew means the crossing. Abraham crosses to the other side, and he begins to tell the story of a universal human. That's why Abraham is called Av Hamon Goyim, the father of many nations. He's pre-Judaism. He's the father of Christianity and of Islam and right, of Judaism itself. And in many traditions, Abraham sends his children eastward, so he's related to Buddhism. Abraham is pre-Jewish. Ibrahim is pre-Jewish, the father of many nations. Abraham is called chesed. He's called eros, love. That's what the great master Isaiah calls Abraham. He's the principle of love, which no one is outside the circle. Right? Wow. Can you imagine that? Abraham is told by God, go to the land of Israel. Abraham goes there, stays for 2 minutes and leaves. He can't be limited by any ethnocentric identity. When nothing and no one is outside the circle, that's God consciousness. For real. That's Homo Amor. That's the awakening of the new human and the new humanity. That's Metatron. That's a potential utopia. That's what Avatar is pointing towards. Avatar is pointing towards that intergalactic love affair. And that's the Song of Songs. And that is the evolution of love. from egocentric to ethnocentric to world-centric to cosmocentric. No one's excluded. Everyone's on the inside. Right? That's the possibility of possibility. And that's the new consciousness that needs to be born right now. Our crisis is a birth. Last sentence. You might think we can't do this. You might think this is fanciful. You might think this is pie in the sky. You might think this is Pollyannish. That's exactly not true. The only thing that is constant in the galaxy is change. Consciousness always evolves. Becoming, not just being, is the movement of cosmos. It will change, just like 1,000 years ago, no one could imagine democracy. And then a few people came and said, let's imagine this. Let's articulate it. Let's be the poets. Let's be the revolutionaries. Let's paint this vision and let's become this ourselves. So who's willing now? Who's willing to play a larger game? Are you willing to play a larger game? Are we willing to play a larger game? Are we willing to play a larger game? Are we willing to participate, friends? Let's find each other the last second in the chat box. We turn to Krista. Are we willing to participate in the evolution of love? Are we willing to cross to the other side? Are we willing to articulate and incarnate in our bodies, to write in the body sacred of who we are, right? A new love story, a new love song, a fourfold song, a fivefold song, the song of songs, the song of Solomon, in which no one's on the outside, in which Jake can marry Natiri and Spider can include, right, all the possibilities. Let's be the avatars of the new world, friends. Let's be the avatars of the new world. Let's create this together. Let's be the revolution.